I grew up in the middle of nowhere, Forestburg, Alberta, a town of about 800 people. But for me, it was really just the farm. Out there, you learn to build yourself. You learn work ethic before you even know what those words mean. And you learn pretty fast that if you want something, no one's handing it to you. You have to build your own path to it. I played every sport I could get my hands on: competitive dance, basketball, volleyball, track, whatever was available in a tiny rural school with limited programs. But basketball, that's where I felt alive. That's where I felt powerful. I was naturally athletic, the kid who could be graceful on stage and a complete savage on the court. I played basketball the way I saw NBA players play, with intensity, swagger, confidence. But as a girl, that wasn't acceptable. I didn't have the language for it then, but I was learning the rules were different for me. I didn't pull back. If anything, it made me dig in my heels. I wanted to be myself, and that feedback just made me double down. That stubbornness would end up being one of the biggest reasons I succeeded in football. And at that time, I had no idea how much that trait was going to shape everything that came next. At home, none of that made sense. My mom and dad both drove tractors, both cooked, both cleaned, no lines drawn. So being told I had too much attitude, that it wasn't feminine, felt like stepping into a world that didn't match the one I grew up in. And when I got cut from college basketball tryouts, not because I wasn't good enough or skilled enough, but because of my attitude, that broke something in me. Basketball was supposed to be my way out, my path to something bigger than a town with no exposure and no connections. But even though that dream ended, something in me stayed open, waiting for the next thing that could match that fire. Football found me when I wasn't looking for it. I was a few years into being a personal trainer, and every day on my commute, I passed a billboard for the Edmonton Storm, women's tackle football. No experience necessary. I'd look at it and think, yeah, no experience necessary. I can't get behind that. It's tackle football. You have to know what's going on. You have to have some experience. So I just would ignore it and keep driving. Then one day, my manager gave me a new client, a woman training for Team Canada football tryouts. Shout out to Joelle. That was the moment everything shifted. I had no football experience. I didn't understand the rules, and I'd probably watched fewer than a handful of games in my life. But hearing Team Canada, that woke something in me that I thought I'd lost. Starting football meant trying something I knew nothing about. It felt like my last real chance to be a competitive athlete, and strangely, that made it safer. There was nothing to compare myself to but me. Right then, I decided, I'm going to be on that field. I'm going to represent my country. I'm going to play football. A dream I'd buried in basketball suddenly felt alive again, just in a different game. I joined the Edmonton Storm in 2013. We played in the WWCFL, the Western Women's Canadian Football League, which at that time was one of the few structured football options for women in the country. We played full equipment, 12-a-side, tackle football. On a good day, we'd have maybe 100 people in the stands. Most days it was closer to 50. Realistically, it was probably averaged out at 25. But the field never felt empty. We created our own atmosphere. Quiet on the outside, electric on the inside. The conditions? Rough. Bad turf, uneven grass, fields that weren't even the right size, likely weren't safe. We had games where not all the refs would show up. But we took whatever we could get. Sometimes we'd get foot field at the U of A, back when it still had that old carpet turf that would tear your skin off if you slid the wrong way. And my very first practice, Yeah. It was on a frozen grass field in like February, March. They'd carved out a rectangle of snow so we had space to run drills. Snowbanks 3 feet high all around. It was so cold that every part of me never wanted to do that again. And every cell in my body was like, girl, what the hell are you doing out here? But for some reason, I came back anyway. Curiosity, stubbornness, and a refusal to quit something I'd already committed to, helped by coaches and teammates who made it feel worth showing up again. Storm resources were bare bones. Really, at that time, women's football resources were bare bones. So we took whatever practice facilities and fields were left over after all other sports booked. We only played 4 to 7 games a season, and that was if you made playoffs. Anything that cost money was a big deal because we didn't have it. We paid to play. Players fundraised like a youth sports team, beef jerky, raffle tickets, sponsorships. Our coaches were volunteers giving everything they had. Travel was long, tiring, and somehow still worth it every single time. But even in those conditions, I worked. I wanted to learn. By the end of the season, I earned Most Improved Player. That award created a hunger, maybe even a bit of a monster. It proved I could learn this game. It proved I could belong here. Beat up grass fields and all. This was the phase where I said yes to everything. Not because it was perfect, but because I was still learning what mattered. After that first storm season, I wanted more. More reps, more competition, more experience. Anything that could help close the gap between where I was and where I wanted to go. At the time, the only women's tackle football opportunity in Alberta outside the WWCFL was the LFL. For those unfamiliar, the LFL was the Legends Football League, formerly the Lingerie Football League, and now known as the X League. It was heavily scrutinized, especially by women, and rightfully so. I was one of them. But I just wanted to play more football, and you can only hold such a strong opinion about something without experiencing it firsthand for so long. So I said yes to the LFL's Calgary Phillies. It was far from traditional football, but it gave me teammates I loved, coaches I respected, and some of my favorite memories from those early football years. But the league's management and ownership moved in a direction that didn't align with who we were or what we stood for. So our team, along with others in the Canadian division, walked away before the first games of the season. And that league hasn't attempted returning to Canada since. In 2014, I went to the World Women's Football Games in Texas. It was the first year of the event put on by the NFL's Sam Rappaport. Women from all over the world, somewhere between 15 to 20 different countries, came together to share their love for the sport and help grow the game. Japan, Spain, France, Australia, Mexico, places I didn't even know American football was played, let alone women's football. That experience cracked my world open. In Canada, I'd been one of the better players. But in the US, in Texas, I saw athletes operating at a completely different level. Athletically, technically, mentally, it was humbling in the best way. It showed me the standard. It showed me what excellence actually looked like. Back home in 2014, I went straight into my second season with the Edmonton Storm. By then, I wasn't just learning the sport, I was learning who I could become inside it. Coming back from the World Games, I was hungry to grow our team and our possibilities. I started getting involved in the board, fundraising, and recruiting. We had a strong base, but I wanted to surround myself with more and higher level athletes. Then came 2015, a continuation of that growth. I returned to the World Women's Football Games. It didn't shake me the way 2014 had, but it reminded me of the level I aspired to reach, of the standard other countries were operating at, of what women's football in Canada could become if we invested in it. Back in Edmonton, Storm Season 3 became pivotal. I stepped into my role with more confidence, more clarity, more presence, eventually earning defensive MVP. But the biggest moment of that season wasn't the award. It was the WWCFL championship appearance and the loss that followed. We showed up to the championship game with only 18 players. And in case you forgot, we were playing 12-a-side football. There was no rotation, no rest, just exhaustion we couldn't hide. Players forced into positions they'd never played, not enough bodies, not enough depth. That discomfort stayed with me. The message was clear. We needed to build more. We needed to grow our roster. We needed a stronger foundation. We needed commitment. We needed a future. That loss lit a fire in me, not just to become better as a player, but to understand what it took to build a team that would never be in that position again. That was the first time I stopped thinking only about my performance and started thinking about systems, depth, and sustainability. I didn't know how to do that yet, so I did the only thing I knew how to do. I committed to becoming the best athlete and player I could be. I set my sights on rebasing the ceiling of what people expected from a female football player in Alberta. By the end of 2016, I didn't know exactly where football was taking me, but I knew this wasn't the end. I had more to learn, more to give, more to become. Looking back, this was still the farm part of my story, just in a different field. And the next part of my story, that's when things really start to accelerate, where I go from simply playing the game to growing inside it in every direction possible. Next episode, the breakthrough.